Every Gundam Pilot is basically a teenager who got handed the keys to a walking nuclear weapon and told to figure it out. Today I'm breaking down every iconic Gundam pilot and what makes each of them tick, starting with the one who accidentally invented the job, Amuro Ray. Amuro Ray didn't enlist. He literally stumbled into the cockpit of the RX-78-2 because Zeon decided to invade his colony and there was nobody else around to pilot the thing. One day he's a 15-year-old tinkering with electronics, the next he's the deadliest soldier in the 1-year war, which is, you know, not ideal. Here's the thing about Amuro. He had new type sensitivity, prescient flashes that let him feel enemy movements before they happened. It wasn't just good reflexes, it was a supernatural sixth sense that made him nearly impossible to kill, and the moment the Earth Federation figured that out, they never let him go. His gift wasn't a gift, it was a leash. The RX-78-2 itself became the blueprint for literally every Gundam that followed. Beam weaponry, modular armor, enhanced pilot feedback. He didn't just pilot the first Gundam, he defined what a Gundam even was. But the real tragedy is simpler. Amuro didn't want to fight. Every time he tried to walk away, the military dragged him back because his value as a living weapon outweighed his right to be a person. Every Gundam protagonist that came after him is essentially a variation on the same cursed question. What happens when you put a kid in a war machine and discover he's too good at killing to ever let go? But if Amuro defined what a Gundam pilot looks like, the next guy defined what a Gundam rival looks like. And he did it wearing a mask. Char Aznable didn't need to fire a single shot to win a battle. His reputation did that for him. The Red Comet was less a pilot and more a psychological event. Enemy forces would hear his name over comms and immediately start making mistakes, which is, you know, not ideal when you're operating heavy machinery in the vacuum of space. His mobile suits tell you everything about the man. The Zaku 2 Custom, the Sazabi, every machine he climbed into reflected the same philosophy. Clean, efficient, elegant, no Federation clutter. Char's suits looked like they were designed by someone who read philosophy between sorties, because they basically were. Here's the thing, Char had new type sensitivity that matched Amuro's almost exactly. Same raw ability, completely opposite conclusions. Where Amuro looked at humanity and thought worth protecting, Char looked at the same species and thought worth demolishing and rebuilding from scratch. He was convinced that earthbound civilization was inherently corrupt, that people needed to be forced into evolution whether they wanted it or not. Noble goal, terrifying execution, but the real tragedy of Char isn't the rivalry or the masks or the red paint job. It's that his new type abilities never gave him certainty. He could sense the flow of human consciousness, feel the weight of collective suffering, and still had zero idea whether he was right. Every battle with Amuro became less about mobile suits and more about one question neither could answer. Does humanity deserve a push off the cliff, or do you let them stumble toward it on their own? Every Gundam rival that came after him is basically doing a Char impression. But if you think his identity crisis was intense, wait until you meet the teenager who took it personally. Camila beat on Amuro questioned whether he should fight. Camila questioned whether anyone had the right to make him fight. That's a massive philosophical leap, and the franchise knew it. Here's the thing about Camille. He wasn't some military prodigy groomed for combat. He was a civilian teenager who got dragged into a war zone when the AEUG raided a Titan's facility. His first act wasn't following orders. It was stealing a Gundam MK2 right out from under the Titans' noses. The Titans murdered his parents and weaponized young pilots against civilian populations. Camille didn't just oppose them from a distance. He rejected the entire premise. His commitment to the AEUG wasn't tactical repositioning. It was a teenager looking at the adults in charge and saying, none of you deserve this authority. And honestly, he was right. His ultimate mobile suit, the Zeta Gundam, was specifically engineered around his new type capabilities, incorporating direct neural integration systems that nobody thought were possible. Deeper synchronization meant sharper instincts, faster reactions, borderline precognition in combat, but it also meant every new type presence on the battlefield could reach inside his head. The same connection that made him extraordinary made him completely exposed. Camila's new type flashes carried devastating emotional weight, moments of genuine psychic insight tangled up with full-blown psychological crisis. And his story doesn't end with a victory lap, it ends with his mind shattering. Not from a beam rifle, not from battle damage, from the sheer psychic toll of being connected to everything around him while watching them die. It's the franchise's first real statement that being a Gundam pilot destroys you from the inside out. But if Camila's story is a warning about what new type evolution costs, The next pilot on our list took that warning and completely ignored it. Judao Ashita. Every Gundam protagonist before Judao had some kind of institutional backing. Amuro had the Federation, Camila had the AEUG, Judao Ashita had a junkyard, and a little sister to feed. He's a street kid from the colonies with zero military training, zero faction loyalty, and zero interest in your war. He stumbled into the cockpit of the Zeta Gundam because he was trying to steal it for scrap money, which is, not the traditional path to becoming a legendary pilot. Here's the thing about the ZZ Gundam he eventually inherited. It was the most complex mobile suit of its era. Dual mega cannon systems, advanced transformation capabilities, enough firepower to level a small colony. It was built for an elite new type operator. Instead, it got a teenager whose primary skill set was haggling with junk dealers and running from debt collectors. And he made it work anyway. His new type abilities were genuinely powerful. Combat prescience, enhanced reflexes, the ability to predict enemy movements mid-battle. But unlike Amuro's cold tactical precision or Camila's psychic intensity, Judao's powers ran on raw emotional energy, compassion, basically. His abilities surged hardest during moments of existential crisis, fueled by how deeply he felt for the people around him. But what really sets Judao apart is how reluctantly he operated within the system. He joined the AEUG and fought against Neo Zeon as part of the Gundam team, but he never stopped questioning it. He looked at the Titans and saw corruption. He looked at the AEUG and saw people barely holding it together. He followed orders when it suited him and ignored them when it didn't. Punk rock Gundam protagonist. The franchise's proof that you don't need a military academy to pilot a Gundam. You just need to care enough. But if Judao bent military structure to his will, wait until you meet someone who was literally built from it, Hero. Every Gundam pilot before Hero Yui had something special inside them. Some cosmic spark, some new type sensitivity, some paranormal gift that made them more than human. Hero had none of that. Zero. What he had instead was a childhood replaced by training and a mind shaped into a weapon before he was old enough to understand what was happening to him. Dr. J and the 5 Gundam scientists created Hero as a military instrument. Combat training, psychological conditioning, mission-focused discipline, all layered until the boy underneath was basically irrelevant. Even his name was part of the conditioning. They called him Hero Yui after a famous pacifist leader, which is a fantastic joke considering his actual function was to destroy everything he touched. Here's your name, kid. It means peace. Now go blow up that military base. And his machines reflected that coldness. Wing Gundam Zero took things to another level. The Zero system plugged directly into the pilot's brain, feeding raw combat data and battlefield predictions straight into their consciousness. Most pilots who tried it went insane. The suit didn't need Hero to feel anything. It needed him to process an inhuman flood of information without breaking, which is, not ideal for someone trying to figure out if he's a person or a product. But here's where Hero becomes genuinely fascinating. His greatest act of rebellion wasn't a battle, it was choosing to feel something. His repeated willingness to self-destruct with Wing strapped to his back wasn't suicidal. That was the ultimate rejection of being treated as a tool. You can't be a weapon if you choose to break yourself. He's the franchise's transition point. Before Hero, extraordinary pilots were born. After Hero, they were built. He proved you could strip out all the mysticism and still create something terrifying. But if you think a manufactured soldier fighting his own programming sounds intense, wait until you meet the guy who settled international disputes with his fists, Domon Kashu. Domon Kashu is the Gundam franchise going completely off the rails in the best way possible. He's a martial arts movie protagonist who happens to pilot a giant robot and somehow it works. Domon comes from G Gundam, which takes place in an alternate reality where nations settle disputes through a giant mobile suit martial arts tournament. Every country sends a fighter. Those fighters beat the absolute hell out of each other in Gundams, and whoever wins gets to rule for 4 years. It's basically the Olympics if the Olympics involve screaming attack names and punching robots through buildings. His mobile suits, the Shining Gundam and later the God Gundam, incorporated martial arts directly into their combat programming. Domon wasn't pressing buttons, he was throwing punches, executing kicks, channeling energy attacks. The Gundam moved because he moved. It was less piloting a vehicle and more wearing a very large, very angry suit. Here's where it gets interesting though. Domon's transcendence, sometimes called the hyper mode or Meikyo Shisui state, wasn't achieved through genetic lottery or lab experiments. It came from spiritual enlightenment through martial perfection. He literally earned his power through practice and philosophical clarity, which is genuinely genuinely refreshing in a franchise full of characters who stumbled into greatness by accident. His real story was personal. His brother Kyoji had been absorbed by the Devil Gundam, and Domon entered the Gundam fight to find him and stop it. Along the way, he realized something uncomfortable. The tournament designed to replace war was just war with extra steps. His eventual alliance with rival pilots he'd been trying to destroy just episodes earlier is honestly the franchise's most optimistic statement about human connection overcoming institutional competition. Domon proved you didn't need to be born special, you just needed to train until your fists could solve problems that politics couldn't. But if Domon represents the franchise at its most unhinged and hopeful, the next pilot represents something far more contemplative: Lauren Seahack. Every other pilot on this list inherited a war. Lauren Seahack inherited the aftermath of all of them. Turn a Gundam is set so far in the future that every previous Gundam timeline has already happened, collapsed, and been buried under centuries of dirt and regrown forests. Civilization rose, built mobile suits, destroyed itself, forgot everything, and started over multiple times. Lauren knows this. And that knowledge makes him something no other Gundam protagonist has ever been. Genuinely tired of the cycle before it even starts again. His new type sensitivity didn't manifest as combat instinct or battlefield precognition. It showed up as empathy, spiritual awareness, a quiet ability to feel what people on both sides of a conflict actually needed, which was almost never more violence. Lauren is the most explicitly pacifist protagonist in the entire franchise. Not reluctantly pacifist like Kira, not philosophically pacifist like Banager. Lauren simply did not want to fight, and he built his entire approach around making sure he didn't have to. Here's the thing though, the Turn A Gundam is the single most powerful mobile suit in franchise history. It can reset entire civilizations. It has nanomachine capabilities that border on reality manipulation, and it looks like a friendly household appliance with a mustache, which is, you know, not ideal for intimidation purposes. But that's exactly the point. The most dangerous Gundam ever built looks the least threatening because ultimate power doesn't need to advertise itself. It's a perfect visual metaphor for Lauren himself. His entire conflict boiled down to standing between Earth's terrestrial factions and the moon race descending from orbit, both sides carrying grudges rooted in wars they couldn't even fully remember. Lauren's answer to Char's question about forcing humanity forward wasn't revolution, it was patience. Just patience. Maybe the solution to repeating cycles of destruction isn't a stronger push, but someone willing to stand in the middle and say, not this time. But if Lauren represents the franchise's quiet philosophical answer, the next pilot represents its loudest emotional contradiction. Kira Yamato. Kira Yamato is a designer baby, and not in the vague, hand-wavy science fiction sense. He was genetically selected before birth through coordinator engineering, every strand of DNA optimized for peak human performance. Enhanced reaction time, superior spatial awareness, accelerated processing speed, all of it manufactured, all of it deliberate. He's basically what happens when you min-max a human being before they even take their first breath. And here's the thing, the Gundam franchise was wrestling with genetic determinism and the ethics of pre-implantation selection decades before it became mainstream dinner table conversation. Kira isn't special because the universe chose him, he's special because a lab did, which makes everything that follows significantly more uncomfortable. His mobile suit progression tells the whole story. The Strike Gundam was impressive enough, but the Freedom Gundam was something else entirely. Overwhelming firepower, absurd maneuverability, energy systems calibrated specifically to squeeze every ounce of performance out of his coordinator physiology. This wasn't a standardized military platform handed to whoever drew the short straw. It was a weapon built around one person's biological advantages. A very expensive compliment if you think about it, but the real conflict isn't mechanical. It's ideological. Kira was literally engineered for war, but desperately wants peace. Every single time he climbs into the Freedom and dismantles an entire battlefield, he proves his creators right. That's the brutal irony at the center of his character. He declared unilateral ceasefire, rejected both factions, joined Lacus's neutral movement, and imposed his own moral authority above institutional pressure. Noble? Maybe. But he enforced that pacifism through superior firepower, swooping into active combat zones, and stopping battles by being better at violence than everyone else in them. Whether that's heroism or the most elaborate savior failure complex in anime history depends entirely on your perspective. The show, to its credit, never gives you a clean answer, but if Kira's struggle was reconciling what he was built to be with what he wanted to become, the next pilot took that concept even further, attempting to transcend humanity altogether. Setsuna F. Seiyai. Setsuna F. Seiyai is where the Gundam franchise stops asking what if humans could connect with machines and starts asking what if the pilot just stopped being human entirely. And honestly, the answer is terrifying. Here's the thing about Setsuna. He didn't start as some gifted prodigy or reluctant hero. He started as a child soldier who literally worshipped Gundam as a god. Not metaphorically. The kid believed a mobile suit was divine salvation. That's the psychological foundation everything else gets built on, which is, you know, not ideal. Then Celestial Being recruits him, and this is where the franchise delivers its most honest examination of interventionist ideology. Celestial Being's entire mission statement is, we will achieve world peace by showing up with the most advanced military technology on Earth and beating the violence out of everyone. They're an anti-war organization that operates exclusively through war. Setsuna buys into this completely at first, because when your whole worldview is built on worshipping weapons, an organization that weaponizes peace sounds like paradise. But his mobile suits tell the real story. The 00 Gundam already pushed pilot integration further than anything before it. The 00 Razor took that integration and blurred the line between where Setsuna's thoughts ended and the machine systems began. And then the 00 KNT basically erased that line entirely. Each upgrade wasn't just better stats, it was another step toward dissolving the boundary between human consciousness and machine. His innovator awakening granted him awareness that exceeded individual biology, genuine communication with his Gundam, expanded consciousness approaching something like a hive mind while somehow maintaining individual identity. He didn't just pilot a Gundam anymore, he became one. The philosophical progression is wild. Child soldier who worships Gundam, fanatic believer in armed peace, skeptical participant questioning everything, and finally, a being who recognized that true peace required transcending violence, humanity, and possibly piloting itself. The implication is clear. The final Gundam pilot won't be human at all, but if Setsuna represents where the pilot concept goes after humanity, the next entry asks what happens when a pacifist inherits the most powerful new type weapon ever built, Banagher Lynx. Every Universal Century pilot before Banagher Lynx was told the same story. New types are the next step in human evolution. New types will lead humanity to understanding. New types are special. Banagher's entire existence is the franchise grabbing that mythology by the collar and asking, but is any of that actually true? Here's the thing, Banagher wasn't born extraordinary. He was an ordinary teenager whose new type abilities emerged almost by accident, triggered through exposure to psychoframe technology rather than some inherent cosmic gift. He didn't discover he was chosen. He just happened to be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, which honestly is the most Universal Century thing imaginable. The RX-0 Unicorn Gundam is where it gets interesting. Its psychoframe systems achieved direct pilot consciousness integration that exceeded every previous example in the timeline. The suit literally responded to new type will, and yet, look at the thing, it's deliberately designed to evoke the original RX-78 too. White armor, classic silhouette, pure nostalgic callback, except underneath that familiar skin sits technology that transcends everything Amuro ever touched. The franchise wearing its own history as a costume while quietly surpassing it. But Banagher's real contribution wasn't mechanical, it was philosophical. Where Char believed new type power justified forcing humanity forward, and Amuro wielded it out of necessity, Banagher arrived at something neither of them could. He believed expanded consciousness demanded ethical responsibility, not political dominance, not military superiority, responsibility. The idea that if you can feel what other people feel, the only sane response is to stop hurting them. His ultimate victory wasn't a beam rifle kill or a dramatic last stand. He prevented catastrophic conflict through personal negotiation and appeal to shared humanity. He had every reason to unleash the Unicorn's full destructive potential and deliberately refused. Gundam protagonist as peacemaker rather than warrior. That's the franchise's most mature statement about what power is actually for. But if Banagher represents the philosophical peak of restraint, the next pilot represents the absolute opposite. A boy who gave his body to his machine piece by piece and never once looked back, Mikazuki August. Every other pilot on this list loses something abstract, their innocence, their sanity, their faith in humanity. Mikazuki loses the ability to move his own body, piece by piece, and he doesn't even flinch. The Alaya Vinana system is the Gundam franchise's most honest answer to a question it's been dancing around for decades. What does perfect pilot machine integration actually cost? Turns out, everything. The system creates a direct neural link between Mikazuki's brain and the Gundam Barbatos, bypassing normal controls entirely. His thoughts become the machine's movements. No delay, no interpretation, just pure consciousness driving 60 tons of metal. Sounds incredible. It is. It's also eating him alive. Here's the thing nobody mentions when they talk about the Barbatos upgrades. Every time that suit gets new armor, new weapons, a slick new form that looks amazing in the opening credits, the boy inside is losing another piece of his nervous system. Each deeper connection with the Alaya Vindana destroys more motor function. First, he can't move his right arm without being plugged in. Then he loses vision in his right eye. Then mobility in his legs starts failing. Outside the cockpit, he's deteriorating. Inside it, he's unstoppable. It's a power-up sequence disguised as a horror story, and Mikazuki keeps going. Not because of ideology, not because some ghost told him to, not because he believes in a better world. He keeps going because fighting is the only thing he knows how to do. He's an orphan soldier in a mercenary company motivated by profit. Without the Barbatos, Mikazuki has zero identity, zero purpose, zero path forward. His humanity is completely inseparable from his utility as a weapon. That's the darkest thing in this entire franchise. The ultimate Gundam pilot approaches infinite capability and complete physical collapse simultaneously, and he walks toward it willingly because the alternative is being nothing at all. But if Mikazuki represents the cost of integration taken to its logical extreme, the newest pilot in the franchise asks whether that cost was ever necessary in the first place. Soletta Mercury, every pilot we've talked about so far got dragged into a cockpit by war, trauma, or some combination of both. Soletta Mercury grew up in one, and that single difference changes everything. She's the first Gundam protagonist where mobile suit enhancement isn't a disruption to her life, it is her life. The aerial Gundam wasn't forced on her through military conscription or desperate survival. It was her childhood companion, her partner, her normal. Soletta is a product of Quiet Zero biological engineering, meaning she's technically post-human before the story even starts. But here's the thing, she doesn't act like it. She's awkward, she's earnest, she stumbles over her words around the girl she likes. She is, against all odds, a teenager. The aerial itself pushes Gundam technology into territory no previous series fully committed to. Its AI systems aren't tools. They achieve independent consciousness and genuine collaboration with Soletta, to the point where the line between pilot and machine becomes genuinely unclear. This isn't Mikazuki's nervous system being eaten alive by integration. This isn't Setsuna dissolving into post-human transcendence. It's partnership, two consciousnesses sharing space and choosing to work together. And her actual conflict, it's not saving the world. It's figuring out who she is when every institution around her has already decided for her. Her relationship with Myrain isn't a wartime alliance or a strategic pairing. It's two people recognizing each other as real, which, after 45 years of Gundam protagonists being psychologically annihilated by their own cockpits, is quietly the most radical thing the franchise has ever done. Soletta suggests you can be a Gundam pilot and still be a whole person. You can share consciousness with a machine and not lose yourself. You can attend school, fall in love, be terrible at public speaking, and also pilot the most advanced mobile suit ever built. After Amuro's trauma, Camilla's breakdown, Mikazuki's disintegration, that's not just optimistic, that's revolutionary. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.